Hello and welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy Podcast. My name is Jed and we are in the Meno again today. Hooray! We are on a hunt to discover what is the excellence that we can achieve as a soul, as a human being. Now, what we have learnt already by following the dialectic of Socrates is that part of being human is having an immortal soul. Yay, we have an immortal soul. And part of being a human being is forgetting the objects we once knew as an immortal soul before we came, before we were incarnated into this human form. So, learning is remembering the things that the eternal, immortal part of our soul eternally and immortally knows. Great, that's what learning is. Make sense of Socrates saying to Meno, you left your school without a spiritual initiation experience? As in, you didn't actually have an experience of the knowable object? Self-knowing itself as pure mind? What was your education for then? If not to move through the cognitive functions from image thinking to opinions to right opinions to understanding dianoia to nous, actually having the experience. What was your education about unless... Oh, by the way, that experience isn't the end apparently. That's also what we've just read in the text. Oh, and there should be a free link below to anyone watching along on YouTube or Twitch. Click below, a free link to this, one of the greatest books ever written. Finally, in a good translation that we can read, accurate to the profound words of Socrates. So moving through these cognitive functions or awakening different ways of thinking, a lot of us know people who are motivated by shapes and colors, image thinking. Some of us know people who are motivated by prejudices or dumb opinions. And hopefully some of us know people who are interested in understanding. Now, dianoia is that desire for understanding, seeing it for yourself, being able to define and communicate it, and hopefully an understanding that can benefit not yourself, but also anyone under the art that the skill falls under. For example, the art of the dialectic is what is being demonstrated by Socrates. This kind of understanding applied to being, applied to the knowable object, that's dianoia. It's a Greek word, but we don't have an English word. So it's important we get one because it's one of the things we can do. It's one of the abilities we have within our consciousness to understand what must eternally be true. Now that understanding is what Meno lacks, so he can't understand virtue. He can't define. The dialectic is understanding directed towards being that allows us to define things that exist eternally. And of course, this whole process of using the dialectic on knowable aspects of the knowable object, self-knowing itself as ousia, or mind turning upon itself and knowing itself as pure being. Our understanding of that through the dialectic is so that we can verify our understanding in direct experience. We want to check it out, have a look ourselves. In fact, that experience of seeing it for ourselves is knowledge and is a kind of remembering. So, if virtue can be not taught but learnt, it has to be one of those things that is eternal, one of the aspects of pure being, that that part of our soul that is still eternal, is connected with, and therefore can remember. If virtue is therefore learnable, it has to be one of these knowable objects. Now, what's interesting is Nous isn't the final cognitive function. There is one beyond Nous, beyond experience, beyond the remembering of eternity itself. Phronesis. Phronesis. Why do we care about phronesis? Because if what we are doing is not from phronesis, or at least directed towards our own phronesis, or facilitating the apprehension of phronesis in someone else, then it's not beneficial. Then you're not actually doing good. And if you're not being beneficial and doing the most good, that can't be the excellence of the human soul. Therefore, excellence or virtue has to involve in some way phronesis. Either that state of being beyond even remembering eternity, remembering truth, remembering the truth of reality. A state of being beyond even that, the thing that has that experience of waking up or of remembering the self. Somehow the state of being of self, one of the highest states of wisdom connected towards the self being in self. Phronesis is tied to that in some way. In the Phaedo, he said it's the actual virtue that you trade the other virtues in for, the gold coin, the currency. It's something of your nature and that never loses its power. So this state of phronesis is either virtue or is a part of virtue. That's where we are, where we left off. Of course, we don't know what phronesis is, and of course, Meno doesn't even know what dianoia is. He can't define or understand, let alone Nous, the experience of enlightenment or mind knowing itself directly, let alone beyond or maybe the right use of both of them. That's something we read. Even the Nous experience, facilitated through the dialectic, through this process of learning how to understand the logos is simply the principles of everything. So understand the causes of or the principles of anything you're interested in. You're going to be heading towards the dialectic. What's the right use of the dialectic? And what's the right use of any experience of reality? What we just read, it has to be to direct yourself even better, even more towards that which is beyond Nous. And wonder, how does the logos relate to the self? Beyond even experience. In the chat, when I hear logos, I think Legos. Oh. I guess you can build with Legos, just like we build an argument by following the logos through the dialectic. When you build with Legos, you end up with a house, just like if you practice the dialectic, practice the logos, you can end up with not a house, but a direct experience of the real beings that will never fall down like a house, that was never built like a house. Eternity. So, similar to Legos, but a bit better. That's where we are in the text. If phronesis, this mysterious goal that we have of somehow knowing the self and being in a state of being that uses Nous and logos to benefit this mysterious puzzle that I guess we're on now. If it's tied to virtue, we better figure out what it is and how to get it, how to keep it. Nevertheless, phronesis has to be either the whole of virtue or at least a part. And then we have to wonder, is phronesis a knowable object, or is it beyond knowing? If it's beyond knowing, then it can't be one of the things we learn, because learning is remembering the knowable object. How the heck do we get phronesis then? If it's not something we can remember, how do we get it? Couple of huge puzzles central to the meaning of life. Considering that the meaning of life would be how to gain the excellence. Nous again is, nous. Nous is the word for the cognitive function that has the ability to reflect upon itself, ousia, and experience itself directly. Let me give you an example. In the physical world, you can have physical connection. For example, I can have parts of my hand. Adaption is for undefined. Don't understand that. Can you say more about that last thing? So this part of my hand can touch this part of my hand like this, and this part with this part. But even if I make a fist, there are parts of my fingers that are not connected with other parts of my hand or my fist. In other words, in the physical world of space and time, there are limitations to how much of a direct connection you can have. Now, move out of the world of space and time into the realm of pure consciousness or pure mind, or ousia, or pure being. All of these words are the same. They're all synonymous. Now, mind has the ability to turn around and connect with itself without those physical limitations. So this part can connect with this part because it's mind. It's just consciousness. Well, it's not just consciousness, it is consciousness. Higher than and prior to even physical reality. So, when the mind turns around and experiences itself fully, in the Phaedo, we call that the separating of the soul from the physical body. The goal of any yoga, really. Because the physical body sees through the senses. That apprehension of pure being, that's nous. We adapt to a changing and undefined world. Right, except if you're into philosophy, in which case you're not really concerned with the changing world, the world of becoming, because everything is changing in the physical world. You're not interested in that, you're interested in that which is eternally true. That's what philosophy is. So when we understand the realm of being, which doesn't change, I mean, there's a dynamic quality in the ousia experiencing itself at all points in all possible ways, giving forth the experience of pure knowingness or pure connectedness or the ultimate beauty or pure bliss. These are all words to describe that experience of mind knowing itself. And that's what philosophy is. It's not about the physical world. Now you might say, well, hang on a second. I spent a lot of money at university, and everything that the modern European philosophers talked about seemed to be, who knows, or there's just the physical world. Right. This is a degradation, a diminishment, a distortion of true philosophy, which isn't, as we read from Socrates, at all about the physical world. It's recognizing that there are certain things in the physical world, like beauty, which don't come from the physical world. You ever seen beauty itself? Or have you only seen things where beauty is an adjective? Well, if beauty is an adjective that can be applied to many different things in the physical world, where does beauty live? It has to be prior to the physical world. This kind of reflection is the first step that Socrates calls not philosophia, the love of wisdom, but philomathesis, the love of learning. Philomathesis, asking these questions about the cause of the physical world, the principles behind the physical world that have to exist non-physically. Asking those questions is philomathesis. And that leads into philosophy. In the Phaedo, we read the exercise of philosophy is separating the soul from the body. The activity, the art we master to do that is the dialectic, which is the art of the logos. I hope I answered your question. Or I hope it gave you more questions to add to your question. So Nous is like a cloud that has yet to turn into rain and join the logos. Nous is a word to describe a cognitive function. Like you can say, well, my hands can clap. My hands can high five. Your mind following the logos could be dianoia, understanding. It's one of the things you can do. You can clap. Your mind can also not only understand being, dianoia, which is the exercise of philosophy, to separate the soul from the body, but your mind can do another thing. It can high five, or it can experience Nous. It can have that cognitive function. It can function in that way, a different kind of a way. Now, this can be puzzling because the different levels are incommensurate, meaning they're completely different. If these are jumps to different ways of experiencing reality itself, every new level will be completely unlike the previous level. That's important to recognize. So we have to put ourselves in a condition where we are most open and receptive for that cognitive switch. If you think, oh, I've got it all figured out, the way I see the world is it. You're not open and receptive to Nous, to being invited to a different activity that mind can do, that is more real, higher. You instantly recognize, oh, I remember this. This is far more real. Do you have a simple phrase that sums up your learning of the logos? Well, that's a good question. Own it. Own your question. Carry it. Polish it up. To carry a question is to be on a quest. You're asking for a simple phrase that sums up the learning of the logos. You're asking for a definition. The very thing Socrates asked from Meno. Can you define virtue? Meno, you want to know if we can learn virtue, if we can learn the excellence of being a human being. What's virtue? Can you give me a simple phrase to define it? Can you define it at all? What did Meno say? Meno said, can't do it. I can only point to things I like. I like being nice to friends, and I like harming enemies, and I like how slaves can't, their virtue is different. And even women, their virtue is keeping the house clean. That a lot of people think. So you have a question. Can you define the logos? That's your question. How would you go about doing it? How do you define anything? And if there's anything worth defining, it's the logos. My goodness, it's a good question. So what did Meno lack? That we are all here to learn the dialectic. Virtue is knowledge that cannot harm society. Where did you get that statement? So that's a conclusion. So you've got a question about how to give a definition. That's your definition. Okay. We're not really interested in... Okay. So what we're learning how to do is read. So that's fine to start to acknowledge this is my definition. This is the opinion that I have from my upbringing. But what we're doing is reading Socrates. Socrates is teaching us something new. Therefore, your question, can I define the logos? What's the method? Dialectic. So use the dialectic. But don't just use the dialectic on opinions you already have. No, that's not reading. Use the key terms and conclusions from the text itself. Create a dialectic for you about the Logos, just using everything that has been said about the Logos in the text. That's reading. Not bringing in your own interpretation, reading what's there. Interpretation means bringing in what isn't in the text or leaving out what is. What is a question that you have based on your readings? Logos, I share that one. What is the Logos? What is virtue? Got that one too. Is virtue learnable? Is virtue actually one of those objects of Nous? If it's not, how can we learn it? If it's not one of the things that we remember? And what's phronesis? And I've got a lot of questions, but that's the point. We gather questions. This is a new way of reading. This is philosophy. To be a philosopher is to be on the true hero's journey, and you've got an inventory with you. Here's your inventory. This is you, by the way. It's a dead-on likeness. In your inventory, questions in your question sack. But also, as you go from the text, either the Logos from Socrates in the Balboa translations, which you can get for free, which is actually what he said, not the garbage they feed university students nowadays. I don't mean that in a insulting way, just an accurate description way. We've got to be honest about that which is most important and about that which can save individual souls and humanity. So let's not lie and treat ourselves like children. It's garbage. Sometimes it can help give a different take, or to sort of get your head around a strange English phrase or something like that. Other than that, it's garbage. But it doesn't matter, because we can have everything. We can have the old translations and read the actual Greek for free with the Balboa, and use that text to create hypotheses that answer the questions. But don't pick a favorite. Carry them all. What does this do to us? It puts us in a certain state of mind as we read. It puts us in a certain state of mind as we reflect about the objects of being. Again, not becoming, not physical stuff, not physical materialism stuff. Being. The immortal part of your soul. The immortal part of your consciousness. The part which knows and can remember knowing. So this puts us in a certain state of mind. A question. You're not certain. You're not closed. You've got a question mark in your soul. Hypotheses. You're not just sticking with the same crap opinions It sounds harsh when you say it that way, but you're not using the same dumb opinions that you brought into the reflection. Who cares what your society, who cares what TV, who cares what your parents, who cares what your religion told you about these things? None of those people are actual philosophers. None of them know the truth. They are all just people pretending to be a knowing so they can pass on their ignorance, so they can pretend to be the knower in a way that passes on ignorance. That is the cause of human problems. That's why we do midwifery. This is different. You're not insisting you know. The hypotheses are from the text. And you're curious. So questions. And not just questions you have once and you forget about. No, you carry them with you. Polish them up. Can you phrase your question in fewer words? Hey, you've got a question about virtue. You've got a question about learning. You've got a question about Logos. Can you make a question that weaves them all together in a super mega ultimate question? And carry that with you. To carry a question is to be on a quest. And philosophy ain't a solo quest.
You're a wizard, Harry.
I'm looking for someone to share in an
I'm
adventure.
looking, like Gandalf is saying.
I'm looking for someone to share in an adventure.
I'm looking for someone to share in an adventure by sharing your question. And it's your question, that's the thing. The best questions in the text are the ones that we have to hunt for. Socrates doesn't tell us. Like, yeah, is virtue learnable? That's the obvious question at the beginning. But there are so many more. What's the role of the dialectic? Is our soul immortal? What is learning? Who should be leading a conversation? What the heck is phronesis? How is it something good, but beyond the knowable object of the idea of the good? If it's beyond nous, which is good, how can it be good, but beyond knowledge? What the heck is this phronesis? And is that the excellence? Is there anything greater than that state of phronesis? How do we get it? What was that whole section about being stung, being confused, being puzzled, but somehow still moving forward, not being a baby, not being pissy about it. You can be pissy, you can be confused and angry and upset because you're so confused about the question. But hold on to the question. That's courage. To hold on to the logos and follow the logos, even if it doesn't feel normal or seem true, of course. That's why you need courage. But as Socrates pointed out in one of the last things we read, courage without nous. Let's read it. Hey, all of these great qualities of the soul. So that would be, I guess, parts of virtue, like sound-mindedness, temperance, keeping your cool, keeping your whole soul focused towards a single goal, quickness in learning, all of these things. Hey, these things, if they are learnt in coordination with nous, that highest kind of intellect that can know truth by remembering what our soul immortally knows, if our development of our other virtues and learning happens with nous, it's beneficial. If it's without nous, it's harmful. So hey, are you becoming a good studier to be a banker? To be a warmonger? To be good at chess? All harmful. Why? You better make sure that your learning, even if it's chess, is in coordinations with nous, so that you can experience nous. Hey, don't you want your whatever you do to be good? Well, you better find out what the idea of the good is. Hey, don't you want it to be beautiful? You better use the model or the nous experience, the archetype, the paradigm, the principle of beauty in whatever you're doing. Otherwise, it's not good enough. Do you want it to be just and fair? Same idea. What is self-justice? It's an aspect of nous. So, however we are growing, if we are doing it coordinated with nous, beneficial without harmful. Let's keep going. By the way, when the soul is guided by phronesis, anything that you attempt in your life, anything you endure in your life, so long as your soul is guided, not just coordinated with nous, guided by, so who's ruling? Phronesis. Then anything you do will end in eudaimonia, the highest state of happiness and tied to being a good daemon, good daimonia. If this is a guiding principle in your life, you can chill out, bro. You can relax. You can sit back. Because, according to this, anything you go through, you'll get the highest goal. It will end in eudaimonia, to function as a daemon. What's the daemon known as functioning? Connects humans to gods. This is why Socrates was murdered, because he had a connection with his daemon. Not only are we getting a connection with our daemon, we are somehow becoming like it ourselves. What does the daemon do? Communicates the logos from the divine self to us through in any thought, a random thought, a choice of goals, the dreams we have. So long as it's unpacked through the dialectic, what is being extended is a divine care, providence. entirely appropriate for our circumstances. This way of functioning that benefits people from a profound level of intelligence, exactly appropriate to what the person needs, that's eudaimonia. The level of functioning and a state of being that Socrates says, hey, if your soul is guided by phronesis, you'll get there. So chill out, relax. In the chat, I wish philosophy made money. You and me both, brother. It would be weird if there were a virtue that all rich people share. It's a similar principle. I mean, you could say to be rich, at least in the... it's not. Wealth is inherited, systems are corrupt, people are born into wealth more common than not, and all profit is based on exploitation. Extracting personal profits at the expense of the suffering and well-being of other people. Why? Because money or profit or capitalism does not account for any of the ideas. At no point of capitalism do we mention the good, do we mention benefit, do we mention our goal to reach the eudaimonia state. No. Just, screw everyone and watch the rich get richer. And just like Monopoly, the board game which was designed to show this, what happens at the end of every single Monopoly game? Everyone ends up broke and then in jail. Yeah, that's capitalism. So, you could say that the people who spend their whole time focused on the Tao or focused on making money, they are practicing a kind of vice version of sound-mindedness. A single-pointed focus that your whole soul is directed towards, but it's making money. That's going to make you worse. So the better you are at focusing, the better you are at having a single-minded goal, the worse of a person you're going to be. That's important. So true vice, as we read in the Phaedo, is the shadow of virtue. It's not an absence of virtue. You can't take, in the chat, you can't take money with you, but you can take the logos. Well, that's a question. That's really the question. Can you take the logos? How do you take the logos? And if you're taking the logos to a new way of being that you're not perceiving through your physical senses, as we said, the exercise of philosophy is separating the soul from the body so that we can experience nous and maybe beyond that phronesis, which means we are jumping to a different kind of consciousness, which means we have to be open and receptive. So no certainty, no I love my opinions because daddy said it and he was a pastor, none of that crap. We have to be open and curious and seeking, again, looking for puzzles in the text, turning them into questions. That puts us in a certain state of mind, and then looking for answers from the text only, using the terms from the text and arranging them according to the structure of the dialectic. That's the game. And if that's the case, if the logos is the thing that allows us to grow, is the thing that allows us to transition to different incommensurate levels of consciousness. Now, incommensurate, you can think of like, you wouldn't say, how many liters of the marathon did you run? Liters is to do with liquids. Meters would be the marathon. Liters and meters are incommensurate. They belong to two different worlds. You wouldn't apply liters to a marathon. Similarly, the logos that we use to recognize that there are understandable key terms like same, difference, self, other, whole, part, limit, unlimited, like, unlike, in time, out of time, beginning, middle, and end. These are basic ideas that everything is based on. And the best use of the dialectic is when you are only using those fundamental terms that we call selfers. Selfers, self-E-R-S. We call them selfers because they are self-logos words. Self meaning being, the honorific. So in other words, the highest use of language that can be used to describe reality itself. Unlimited, eternal, all of the whole, all of the parts, same and different at once, self and other united, all these sorts of words. When you use them through your regular state of being, that's dianoia. That's the exercise of the dialectic. But if the whole point of this philosophy is so that we can change the way that we experience the moment, the way that we experience self, the way that we experience this reality in the present, then we have to wonder, how does logos change? Because if it's a whole different way of viewing these things, logos would work differently. You wouldn't be saying, these two guitar picks have a likeness because there's a same in the shape, but there's a difference in color. Okay. That's a good start, and we talked about that being philophorenesis, and eventually you'll start asking questions, well, what is blueness itself? Just like we asked, what is beauty itself, or what is truth itself? And hey, if there is a true, understandable paradigm that should be followed by every single politician, what the heck is it? The logos and dialectic, and should we demand it from every elected official? If not, they cannot be acting with integrity. They cannot be acting with intelligence, and they definitely cannot be benefiting anyone unless they are using the logos, the dialectic. That's the paradigm. But it's a paradigm that can be used to organize the physical world, but it also can apply to Nous. So yes, the logos should be what laws are based on. Necessarily have to be rational, to be mature, to be beneficial. That's what we want. It's the world we want, a mature, rational, beneficial one, helping everyone. But that model that we use didn't come from the physical world. Where did it come from? The world of being. Oh, so we can use the same dialectic and logos to also explain something completely different, the world of being, or Nous. So the same thing, loosely speaking, logos, is used in an incommensurate way. So what? So that's your question. Do we take the logos with us if it's used differently? And how will we recognize that difference? And what difference will it make having an experience of being, not because you're, tripping at a hippie festival, but because you're taking the logos with you in your back pocket in some way. And of course, the question that we are asking here is, okay, that's great. If you're not doing the art of dialectic, you're not following the logos, you're not able to define, like Meno couldn't define virtue, you're not able to understand, like Meno couldn't even understand shape, let alone virtue. Right, so you have to be using the dialectic and the logos to understand, to define, to communicate, to be a good friend. If you don't know the dialectic, you're going to fall on debating personal opinions, fighting, defending your ignorance and prejudice, all that shit that Meno was doing. You don't want that. So the art of the dialectic is needed for understanding, for communication, for being a good friend, for definition. But as we just read, that, without also being coordinated with Nous, is not beneficial. You don't want to be a master wordsmith to, shoot down conversations, or to be a debate bro. Ha 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 ha, I prove that, capitalism is good. I win. Give me money, rich people. Says most reporters under capitalism and stuff, because that's just where the game ends. That's where it goes. So, coordinated with Nous, following the logos, the art of the dialectic, isn't good enough yet. What? Because, hey, coordinated with intellect, sure. The virtues to do with following the logos and practicing the dialectic at all times, sure. Quickness in learning. Learning what? The dialectic. Sound-mindedness. Keeping your cool and keeping a single focused attention on what? I know the Dow Jones. I know becoming rich. I know getting more clicks. Nope. On the dialectic, on following the logos. Make sure it's coordinated with Nous. Otherwise, harmful. If so, beneficial. Hey, if the soul is guided also by phronesis, then whatever you do, whatever you attempt, you'll get there. Hooray. Good news. He's not asking us to be immortally wise and all-knowing. He's saying, hey, just be open-minded. Just have some integrity. Like, keep your open mind, keep these questions, learn this new way of reading. Doesn't it make sense? Are you really reading a book? If you open a book and it says, I don't know, what's a book? What's a book? To Kill a Mockingbird. To me, this book's about Jesus and Pokemon. No. I mean, you can write that. We're not taught why that's terrible and that's not reading. Just interpret whatever. Okay? Is that actually reading? Be honest with yourself. No. It's in fact catching yourself whenever you do that, whenever you have a tendency or a compulsion to add, to project what's not there. If you're reading the Meno and you start thinking, oh, I think he's talking about Pokemon selection. No, you're not in the text. I mean, it's important to take notes of when and where this happens for your work in midwifery to understand the cause of your projection, the cause of your interpretations. But nevertheless, we're learning to read, which means using the terms from the text. The next question is, hey, if this is the most important thing that we can do, left to us by the greatest, most perhaps beneficial person to ever walk the planet, Socrates, not only should we be reading what's there only, but what about the questions? Would all of them be surface? Or would we have to hunt for some questions? Hey, by the way, could you do any of that unless you weren't actually personally invested? You have a reason for doing this. You want to be better. You want to know what you are. You want to know where you were before you were born. You want to know where you're going and therefore what you should be doing here. You want to know your excellence. You want to know the highest reach of the mind. You want to know what the self is. And you want to know what is good and true. And not only you have that as your motivation, but you're doing it. You're practicing the dialectic whenever you can. You're talking to your friends and saying, hey, let's meet for coffee so I can practice this dialectic on logos with you. Or this dialectic on phronesis from the Meno. If you can find a friend that you can practice the dialectic and this sort of reflection on the self-er ideas, then you're a lucky person. Cherish that person. Cherish that friend. Buy them lots of coffees. I'm sure once they're in the game for a while, they'll see the value in your love of the logos and they will start buying you coffees too. But good question. Yes, very long way of addressing it. One of the questions is, how do we take the logos? Because that's where it comes down to, right? You can't take, as you said, you can't take money. But if we are learning through the logos and it's a remembering, maybe we take that back because it fits. I don't know. Good question. I share that one with you. Eudaimonia is a great feeling. Oh, fantastic. You seem eudaimonic. Well, yeah, I suppose the more we can share in the logos, I wonder if the more of our natural eudaimonic nature comes forth. That's a good question. Yeah, and I suppose if you do invite your friend to coffee, even if you're tricking them and you say, "Oh, I've got this drama in my life. I need to have a coffee with you and just hash this out." And then once you have coffee, the drama in your life is a puzzle about the logos. Okay, you might be tricking them to get them there, but it's for their own good. They get to learn about the logos. They get to be introduced to the logos. They get to maybe be introduced to a way of being that you are now embodying, where you're curious, you're asking questions, you're reading without interpretation. You're not carrying all your beliefs and prejudice like a big heavy sack weighing you down. You can even see it in the way that people are hunched over sometimes. They're carrying the lines in their face. They're carrying all their dumb opinions and belief. Dumb because it's in their way. They're carrying things that will therefore get in the way for nous, or even dialectic sometimes. If they're certain that there is no truth, or they're certain that there is no understanding, any of these dumb things to be certain about. But it closes us. We want to be open and curious like Socrates was. Meno didn't like being open. Realize he doesn't know. And Socrates said, hey, let me show you how important it is to realize you're mistaken. So that's a good way of finding out if you're talking to one of the better people in the world. If they like argumentation or dialogue, if they like discussion or dialectic, because they recognize, they either get to put words on the truth, which helps them, and also they share the truth with their friend, win-win, or they discover they were mistaken about something, which means they are no longer going to walk around the world doing harm inadvertently, being mistaken. And now they know the truth that they can use. It's win-win, win-win-win. So somebody who likes discovering the truth and isn't hung up on who was right or wrong to begin with, these are the better sorts of people. These are the people you invite to coffee. These are the people you cherish. And these are the people you share your most significant questions with, because philosophy ain't a solo quest. Fun game to play. Because the better people you just recognize. And the more you're into philosophy, it hits you like the same way physical beauty. If you're walking down the street and a stunning person walks by, you can't help but notice. That's what beauty does. There's a reason why when beauty was born in the symposium in the Garden of Zeus, when beauty became one of those self-er terms, when beauty became one of the aspects of Nous, the gods had a party. Because human beings can't help but notice, can't help being attracted. And the more that you see the value of the dialectic, the more you see the value of being a good daemon and the logos, the more the beauty of these sorts of people will start to become obvious. And they're the sorts of people who say things like, I like having arguments. I either discover I was mistaken about something, in which case I can learn the new thing and carry that with me for my benefit, or I can enjoy being right about something. That's fun too. And say, oh, by the way, I instantly recognized a amazing beauty of the soul that transcends even physical beauty. And what that tells me is that your soul is very close to the logos, has a kinship with the logos. Let me buy you a coffee and help you get all the way there by introducing the logos and the dialectic. And strange words like dianoia and nous. Oh, and the big one, phronesis. But we don't have to know what they mean. We can share them as a puzzle for as long as we're in a relationship. And hey, if that relationship is successful in the way that Socrates is talking about here and in the Phaedo, then maybe that relationship that you have with this special kind of friend who has an affinity towards the logos, maybe that's a relationship that can continue beyond this reincarnation and beyond any kind of physical reincarnations. As Socrates says in the Phaedo, hey, send a message to my friend. If he's a true philosopher, race as quick as you can to meet me where I'm going. Because Socrates says, I've completed my work. I don't have to reincarnate again. I've escaped not just the chains of my personal pathologos problems, but the prison of reincarnation. So, the place I'm going, having escaped that prison, meet me there as quick as you can, if you're a true philosopher. So, what does that mean? I don't know, but it's a puzzle, it's something to wonder about, and we can take that wonder with us and to wonder, hey, those sorts of people, will that relationship where we discuss eternal truth, aspects of truth, the self-logos, destiny, our highest purpose, destiny, phronesis, virtue, that kind of relationship over coffee, the best kind of coffee, maybe it can continue beyond this. Right, and how will you know you're graduated? Well, we have a bit of a knowledge wisdom bomb dropped on our asses. Hey, maybe you know you've completed it when you end as a daemon. If the soul is guided by phronesis, everything she attempts or endures ends in eudaimonia. Alright, so we've got the art of the logos and dialectic. Coordinated with number 1. Number 2, coordinated with Nous. Number 3, guided by phronesis. Accordingly then, says Socrates, virtue or excellence is a certain one of those in the soul. If it is one of those rememberable things, then it has to be necessarily beneficial to self. Also, then it has to be mindfulness. Because, again, as we said, it's not going to be beneficial without coordinated by Nous and guided by phronesis. Seeing that all the selves of the soul, selves, highest aspects, are neither beneficial nor harmful according to themselves, whereas they become beneficial or harmful by the addition of phronesis or a lack of phronesis. Even enlightenment can be used for harm. Enlightenment is a sort of a general word we use to describe the mystical experiences of Eastern spiritual traditions like Taoism that talk about the pure light of being or knowing everything all at once or eternity. We call that Nous or pure being. Even that, even with the dialectic, you got to make sure it's directed towards, it has the addition of phronesis. By this logos, by excellence being indeed beneficial, it has to be, if it's excellence, it must be a kind of phronesis, right? Appears to me, says Meno. Someone who doesn't know what phronesis is, probably. Socrates says, and surely indeed, let us also take up the other kinds, which we were just now discussing, such as wealth. All right, so generally considered positive characteristics, not of the soul, like quickness of learning or temperance or sound-mindedness, but of the body, wealth and beauty and such like that, which are at times good and at times harmful. Yes, marketing, pretending beautiful things are good for you when it ain't. Politics, using beliefs and in-group mentality and image thinking and clan identity and pathologos triggers to manipulate people to act in harmful ways based on beliefs. So, using money, using wealth, using a big marketing budget, using a big pack. Okay? So, whether it's of the soul or of the body, like wealth and beauty, can be good, can be harmful. Were they not made just like the other kinds of the soul, so that when phronesis guides, they benefit? Again, even the physical characteristics, make sure they're guided by phronesis. By the way, one of those positive characteristics of the soul, sound-temperedness, sound-mindedness, sophrosoon. Now, here's a little puzzle about sophrosoon. It's one of the 4 virtues. It's the first one, temperance. Sometimes it's called keeping your cool, but also we talk about having every part of your soul, your inward desiring part, I want a sandwich. Your outward desiring part, I want to go and do this thing. I want to achieve this thing. Your reasoning part, I want to make sure I'm following a good plan. I want to make sure I'm doing something beneficial. I want to think well, plan well. All three of those parts of the soul working towards the same single goal. Again, not making money or the stock exchange or how to, I don't know, scam people through crypto. No. What would be the actual single-minded focus of the soul that this virtue of the soul can be beneficial? Well, it better be something that leads us to intellect, otherwise that ain't virtue, and it better be something that opens us up to or leads us to phronesis. It's got to be in those directions. Well, what's a single-minded activity that will lead to those things? What's the one thing we can focus all our energy on that will lead to our mastery of the dialectic, the art of the logos, lead to Nous, that we can make sure we coordinate all our actions in, and also lead to that which is beyond Nous, a state of being called phronesis? What leads to all those things? That's the question. Don't know what it is. So, if virtue is beneficial, it has to be a kind of phronesis, because all of the selves of the soul, including the selves of the body, like wealth, the excellence of the body, wealth and beauty and stuff, are either beneficial or harmful by the addition of phronesis or the lack of phronesis. By this logos, by excellence being indeed beneficial, must it be a kind of phronesis? It appears so, says Meno. Surely then, let us also take up other kinds that we were now... Oh, we've already read this. Sorry. All right, at times good, at times harmful. When phronesis guides, they benefit the soul, but when a lack of phronesis leads, they harm. So, in turn, in these cases, if on one hand, soul uses and guides them correctly, in coordination with Nous, guided by phronesis, she will make selves beneficial. Interesting. Go down to your, find the nearest enlightened Buddhist or enlightened Taoist and say, hey, you know that experience of pure being that you had? They said, well, I wouldn't use that language, but I know what you mean. Yes, sir. I am enlightened. I am the great Buddha now. Oh, by the way, is that experience going to be beneficial or harmful? Well, according to what we read here, according to what we're seeing with Socrates, laying it out for us, it ain't beneficial unless you use your enlightenment experience, O Taoist friend, to reach phronesis. So, virtue is a kind of phronesis, right? When the good, okay, and now we have this crazy idea of phron, like eudaimonia. Eudaimonia, good daemon, kaka daemon, the negative daemon, the pathologos voice. Good phronesis guides correctly, whereas a lack of phronesis misses the mark. Okay, here is our puzzle, because hang on a second, we've been using phronesis with its absence, aphronesis, but this is the first time we've used the word good. The opposite of good isn't a lack, so it's not a good phronesis soul guiding correctly and a lack of phronesis missing the mark. So we posited there would be something, not aphron, but kakaphron. So what would be a state of being of the false self that guides the soul and causes us to amatya, miss the mark. We aim our arrow and we miss the mark. And we wonder, hang on a second, we won't find it in Plato, but every second day on this channel, we read about a kind of opposite of the self, that's not really the self, that actually does guide the actions of all human beings, putting them in a somnambulist or a sleepwalking or a zombie state. Is the kakaphron our pathologo state? By the way, do you know when you're in the pathologo state? Seems to have no qualities. You can't recognize it. That's why we need to do midwifery. That's why it's good to have friends. They'll help point out things. Hey, by the way, I don't think you noticed, but your voice changed. You started talking more meekly, or started apologizing a lot or something. You changed. Oh, really? This seems normal. Or something along these lines over coffee. Once again, I say coffee, we have a sip. My flamingo has some as well. Loves coffee. They'll say things like, oh, by the way, every time we have this style dialectic, we start to follow the logos, but then you start to shoot yourself down, and the person will say, I don't think so. I think I deserve this. I think I'm accurately describing how terrible I am, or how I will never understand, or I will never be as good as Socrates. It seems true. Doesn't stand out. No qualities. If that's the case for the kakaphron, are we learning more about, perhaps, just as a hypothesis, because it's not in the text yet, but we can speculate, given we are also learning the opposite in midwifery to the logos, the pathologos? Would that mean that the good phronesis is also a lack of qualities, only it's true? I don't know. We can wonder. Because what is that state of phronesis, of the self? And it's not the brilliant light of bliss or knowledge or remembering. It's a even higher state that has that experience. If the self has the experience of Nous, it's got to, in some way, be absent of the qualities that Nous can have. Anyway, we are wondering, but that's something we can do here because we're friends and we're having coffee. So, the good phronesis guides correctly. The lack of phronesis, or maybe the bad phronesis, misses the mark. Yes, the mindful soul, the uphrone, the good phrone, guides correctly. Meno says this is so. Surely then, says Socrates, do we not say that it is in this way in every case, so that for human beings, everything depends on the soul? So now we are coming to a conclusion. So this general statement about all human beings tells us we might be at the end of the dialectic, where we're at the conclusion stage. Are we summarizing? Synthesis. And then do we take that summary and apply it back to our initial definition? Synthesis and analysis, the two stages of the conclusion. There are 4 parts of the dialectic, and the conclusion has 2 parts to it. Let me see if I can make that more clear. Here we go. Right, 2 halves if the thing exists or if it doesn't. Definition. It can either be something true about this definition or something false, or both. But it's just a category. How would you define the thing itself? How does that thing function? Demonstration. How does those things having been affected by that functioning, how do they go on to affect other things? Others to others, division. And the final stage 4 synthesizes from those divisions into a kind of general principle of or conclusion that is analyzed, which means taken back to that original definition, and the 2 are smushed together. Now you have a new insight, a new definition, you've leveled up, hooray. So, I'm just pointing this out just as a quick refresher because I am clocking language that might... Hey, welcome to the chat. Thanks for stopping in and giving me an emote of a cute anime girl, I think. Very nice. Because I recognize language that it kind of is like seems to be summing up or generalizing or coming to a conclusion, my mind goes, maybe this is conclusion. Which means maybe there were 3 stages beforehand that I haven't seen yet. Which means I got to go back into this section of the text and pull out what might be, again from the text, the division, the demonstration, and the definition, because I think I recognize the conclusion. What's that called? That's called discovering our own questions. Discovering the puzzle. Yes, there are some explicit questions that anyone, and I use the example Inception. If you haven't seen the movie Inception, it's pretty cool. It's about Leonardo DiCaprio going into people's dreams and incepting an idea, putting an idea into their brain through their dreams, into their mind through their dreams. Okay, so on the surface level, there's a drama or a question that the main character has to solve. How do I get home to my kids? Now, that's for everyone. That's for the casuals. That's for your grandma. Even she can get that. But at the end, I don't want to spoil it, there's something that might seem out of place or unusual that makes you think, hang on a second, maybe the real question wasn't the one for my grandma, wasn't the obvious one for casuals or noobs, but for people like me who like to think. Right. So too with this. It's better if we can discover our own questions. And Socrates sometimes only gives you one word or one clue to say, hey, by the way, there's a dialectic here. So what? Well, hopefully, you watching can craft your own 4-step or 4.5 if you count these as an extra half. A 4-step dialectic on this section and share it with us. And remember, you're not supposed to get it right. It's a relationship. You're supposed to get it curious. You're developing and fostering and nurturing a sort of curiosity and a habit of approaching all questions to look for puzzles. A habit of looking for puzzles and a habit of using the dialectic to solve puzzles. And as Nitro was saying in chat, this might be a habit worth practicing because this might be the only habit that you can take with you beyond this physical lifetime. It ain't going to be the habit of going to the bank. It ain't going to be a habit of headshotting in Call of Duty. It ain't going to be the habit of how to manipulate for fame. None of those physical things. But if it's a habit of looking for puzzles and using the dialectic to solve them, maybe it's a habit worth practicing. And maybe you've been given an opportunity, hooray, in this part of the text. And the more you practice it, the more you can become familiar with it. Oh, hang on a second. I'm reading this part of the text and it seems to be about functioning. Maybe I'm in a demonstrations phase. This is the whole idea. We're getting to the way of thinking behind the author. How does Socrates think? Because we want to have that way of thinking allowing us to be excellent. Also to reach Nous, also to be able to benefit in a way that no one else can. Because it comes with phronesis too. So we want to think this way. So the more you have coffee with your friend and practice this dialectic, the more you might recognize, oh, that's the definition. Oh, the word itself. What would you say about beauty itself? Oh, definition. You start to catch it, which is important because it's the habit that we want to take with us. So, it may or may not be there, but maybe, because for all human beings, sounds like a conclusion. Okay, so for all human beings, everything depends on the soul, right? We would say we're either living a dialectic as a kind of sleepwalking zombie, motivated by the pathologos, the false belief in our soul, or we are developing this relationship with the Logos, with self in the moment, with mind in the moment, which is a good development of soul, which would reflect the virtues of the soul. Okay? So everything for human beings depends on the soul, right? And the virtues of the soul depend on phronesis, if they intend to be good. If you're a good person. And everyone in this chat and on this channel is a good person. And thank you for for stopping in when you can. I know everyone's got their lives and they're busy, but I appreciate when you guys stop in, and I appreciate when you just leave a comment or a picture or a question or anything. It's nice to know that there are people enjoying this. And if you have any suggestions or anything you'd like from the stream, please let me know, or let me know in the Discord. The goal is to create a fun, relaxed atmosphere, a place to hang and chill, in which we are talking about the most meaningful things. When I came across people like Alan Watts and then Pierre Grimes, I was like, I want to keep these videos on in the background, because there is a sense of relief and normalcy and obviousness to hear Pierre or Alan talk about these things that are most important. I can't believe it's not being talked about all the time. It's hard to go back to soap dramas or even comedy podcasts with that are lacking the Logos, are lacking the self, are lacking meaning. So a cool, chill place where we are being mature, where we are thinking about the things that matter the most. What is the self? Even everyday physical life, like, you know, there are politics streamers on Twitch, and some of them are fantastic. But the next stage would be, okay, well, yeah, politicians don't have any model, and we are seeing the implications. Well, what is the model? How do we get it? How do we make the case that everyone should get it, especially politicians? And how do we organize not just our laws, but our soul based on it? So how do we actually solve the puzzles? So to create a channel, a Discord space, and where just fun and chill and relaxed and meaningful, because, you know, we're doing the same thing. We're wondering where the heck we came from. Where are we going? Good thing we can do this thing Socrates is saying. We can remember our immortal nature. Phew. We're all born into this video game and we don't know what the heck we are. Good thing we can remember. Oh, okay. Up for your music. Michael Jackson lyrics in the style of Jimi Hendrix. Dude. That's a big ask. I will definitely give it a shot at some stage, but to capture the essence of Michael Jackson's lyrics, that is in essence independent from his style, as well as capture the essence of Jimi Hendrix and express that in style so I can put the two together. That'd be pretty neat. So yeah, so the idea of the channel is something you can tune into or have in the background or just chat through, or that's chill and fun. Secondly, encouraging and positive. I'm trying to do my best to encourage you guys to do dialectics and share them. Look for the better people in your world, invite them to coffee, establish these relationships that might be relationships that last multiple lifetimes. So also positive and encouraging. And third, finally, to make philosophy more accessible. This is your job. This is your game. This is your birthright. Every human being. You're a philosopher whether you know it or not. The question is everything depends on your soul. Is your soul being led by the pathologos which does harm? Or can you discover how to master, guide, rule your own soul that actually benefits yourself and everyone? Hopefully forever. So it's your job. this Meno is for you. So the third part of this channel is to hopefully make philosophy more accessible. So I use cheesy things like leveling up sometimes and cheesy sound effects. Just as analogies to help make things more accessible. But yeah, Nitro, ask me a question about philosophy. We're talking about the meaning of life here. Music is an important tool to express the logos and have fun with it, but so, okay, conclusion. For all human beings, everything depends on the soul. You might have heard the quote, all human conflicts are just a conflict with ideas. Again, another reason to know the truth. Do this. And the virtues of the soul depend on phronesis, if they intend to be good. By this logos, that which is beneficial will be phronesis. Then we do declare that virtue be beneficial. Right? Very much so. Accordingly then, we do declare excellence or virtue to be either wholly or a certain part phronesis. Yes, it appears to me, Socrates, that the words spoken are spoken well. So we will give Socrates a hand. Socrates goes on, is it always a good stream and informative? Thank you. Oh, I'm glad to hear. And again, any ideas or suggestions, just let me know. Drop them in the Discord somewhere. I'm thinking about doing, when we pick up some more people, maybe doing watch-alongs. Like if there's something in the news or if there's something on Twitch or, I don't know, some significant drama. We could watch it on stream and comment on it and understand it in a philosophical way. That might be fun. But we'll play it by ear. Socrates goes on, is it not so then that if this has to be in this way, that human beings cannot be good by nature? Uh-oh. Human beings cannot be good by nature. Why? Well, because we need phronesis. Those who don't have phronesis are not going to be the good. For if it does not appear to me, says Meno, that human beings can be good with by nature. For if that were possible, says Socrates, then this would also follow. If human beings were to become good, okay, if, so it's a hypothesis, if, by nature, then there would be some of us who would recognize those of the young. So we would recognize, oh, this is one of those recognize those of the young who are good by nature. This is one of those good boys. There's a good boy here. We've got a good one. Put the good boy in the good boy tower so that we can make sure he will be good forever and then rule our city. Good by nature, and we would guard those whom they pointed out to us by placing them in the upper city. So not really in the castle as a prisoner like Tangled Princess, but we are putting them in the upper city. We're keeping them in a special place. The good boys and the good girls. Seal them up even more securely than we seal up our gold, of course. More important than gold, these good boys and good girls. In order that no one ruins them, ruins selves. Then, when they should arrive at their prime, they'll be useful to the city. Okay? That's why we keep them in the tower. The good boys and good girls. But that doesn't happen, so what? Take notice then. Meno says, yeah, that's likely what we'd do if that was true. Take notice then, seeing that it is not by nature that the good become good. You're not born a good boy, just like you're not born an evil baby. So no justification for genocide. So, not by nature that we are good or heathen or sinful. It's not by nature that the good come to be good. Then they do become good by learning or remembering. Meno says, it already appears to me necessary And it is clear, according to the hypothesis, that if indeed virtue or excellence is knowledge, then it is teachable. Bingo, bango, bongo. So we're closer than when we started. We started by Meno asking Socrates, can you teach virtue? And Socrates saying, can you define virtue? And Meno going, I went to the best schools. Yes, but can you define virtue that you are asking me about? My daddy's rich. I know the king of Persia. And then Socrates says, can you define anything? Says Meno, I'm probably going to lead Athens one day. You can't define anything. Have you experienced Nous yet? You have left school and you haven't experienced Nous. What's your education been about? So we started there. Now we have come to a conclusion that we then roll over and take with us, that if virtue is knowledge, then yes, indeed, you can teach virtue. Because teaching is really remembering. Remembering is remembering what's in the immortal part of our soul. And that's what we're here for. That's what dialectic is for, and one of the many important things it's for. So yeah, if virtue is knowledge, then it is rememberable, teachable. Says Meno. So let's put this in a different color, because this isn't Socrates' conclusion. Socrates says to that, perhaps. Socrates not convinced. So put that in blue. But perhaps it is by Zeus, says Socrates. But perhaps we did not speak correctly by agreeing to this. Meno says, and it most certainly did appear that we spoke correctly. Really, Meno? This is a little bit funny. Meno said, it appeared to me that we were saying the right thing. Meno, who knows nothing. He doesn't even like being mistaken. Anyway. Appeared to me that we were speaking correctly, says Meno, which is funny. Socrates says, but self must not only just now appear to have be spoken correctly, but both in the present time and in the time to come, if there is going to be anything useful or healthy or sound about self. So we're not just talking about saying something good now, or saying something that can change with fashion or theories or anything like that. Something that is true and will always be true even in the future. If there's going to be anything sound or healthy about our words, about our logos, or about self. So what are we saying? Hey, we're talking about using the words, the logos, correctly, and whether or not it appears to be sounding correct. Hang on a second. We want something that will be correct in the present time and in the future. Well, what's something that is outside of the world of becoming? That can last in that way. Oh yeah, feel free to look. That's great. Socrates says if something's true and worth saying, it's worth saying many times. So the more you have this in the background, the more it will become normal to think in this way. Even if you're lurking in the background. So, if there's going to be anything healthy or sound about self, it has to be forever. What do we just say? If it doesn't accompany phronesis, it's not going to be beneficial. So whatever we do or talk about that's beneficial has to be eternally so. Maybe. Or, so that's the idea of self in the honorific. But we could say, well, our words not only appear to be correct, they have to be correct now and in the future if there's anything sound or healthy about those words. So that's the word it as self. Remember, whenever you see the word self, you can take it as it, you can take it as the honorific in being, knowledge, or you can talk about the one self. In other words, whenever you come across the word altos or self, capital S, you can go on a hunt to discover new questions for yourself. That's exciting.
Wow.
Socrates says, wait. Meno replies to Socrates, well, what now then? What are you seeing that makes self disagreeable? Makes the words disagreeable? And makes you distrust that virtue is not knowledge. Why are you saying it's not knowledge? It's good. And knowledge is of the good. And we can remember knowledge. So what are you talking about, Socrates? I will tell you, O Meno, says Socrates. For on the one hand, I do not withdraw that it is correctly spoken that if indeed it is knowledge, so Socrates thinks this as well, if it is knowledge, then it is teachable or rememberable. But on the other hand, consider whether it is reasonable to you that I appear to distrust that it is not knowledge. What? This fucking sentence. Excuse my language. Let us consider whether it is reasonable to you, there's one qualifier, as to whether I appear, another qualifier, to distrust, a negative, that it is not knowledge. How the hell are you supposed to make sense of that paragraph? I'll tell you how. We read a different translation, because that was garbage. Now, that probably is how it's written in the Greek, and probably for a good reason. Often Socrates will give you what isn't true, or give you the negative, like he did with aphronesis instead of kakaphronesis, non-phronesis instead of the bad leading of the soul. He will phrase it in negative, so he's giving you a quick job to do. Just flip it. Like, I'm not standing. If I said that, it would be so that you, as the reader, could change it in your notebook. Oh, when Jed does the podcast, he's not standing. Cross that out. Sitting. Sitting is also not standing, but it's the actual thing. Not the pointing at the absence of something. Like, I'm not an elephant. That's true, but the positive would be I am a person. This is a duck. He dances. All right, so let's unpack this crazy sentence. We are at 89D. So let's bring it up. We were just slamming the past translations before, but this is when they actually come into their, or serve their purpose. 89D. I will tell you, Meno, I do not withdraw as incorrect. Okay, now it's making more sense. I do not withdraw as incorrect the statement that it is taught if it is knowledge. I'm not saying that that's wrong, okay? If it's knowledge, it's learnable, rememberable. But as to it being knowledge, consider if you think I have grounds for misgiving. For tell me now, if anything at all, not merely virtue, is teachable, hey, must there not be teachers and learners of it? I don't know if I like this argument. Well, yeah, I don't know, maybe we haven't evolved to the... Hey, there aren't a lot of teachers of the logos. There aren't a lot of midwives out there. But midwife is learnable, rememberable, teachable. Anyway, let's keep going. It appears to be indeed that there would be teachers and students. Is it not so, in turn, that the opposite must be the case? For we would likely infer correctly by inferring that self is not teachable, of which there are no teachers or learners. Now, in brackets, both Protagoras and Gorgias, the teacher of Meno, were self-professed teachers of virtue. These are people who Socrates have spoken to before, and also Gorgias is Meno's teacher. Meno says this is so, but it does it appear to you that there are no teachers of virtue? What about my teacher? Socrates says, I am constantly searching to see if there might be some teachers of self. Now, does he mean self, the one self? Is that what he means by getting phronesis, to learn about the self? Or does he mean teachers of the self of excellence, of virtue? Can be both. Take them both. Socrates says, I'm constantly searching to see if there might be some teachers of it or self. And even though I'm doing everything I can, I'm not able to find any. And yet, I indeed share this search with many. It's not a solo quest, as we say. And especially of those whom I think would be the most experienced of this reality. People more familiar with what? The Logos, the reality of Nous, and maybe a higher reality of phronesis. I've been looking for these people. You gotta have all three, apparently. And just now, Meno Anitos has rocked up to the party. Hooray! Welcome.
What?
Anitos has the opportunity to come sit down by us, whom we must share this search. Okay, now Anitos is in the picture. So, what do you think of that argument? If it is teachable, there'd be teachers. I don't like it. I'm right off the bat. I'm not sold. Because the Logos is teachable. I haven't seen any colleges. Pierre Grimes was one. He passed away last year. Does that mean there is no philosophy because people take the opposite of philosophy as philosophy? And true philosophers who do this are called weird? And attacked because we don't agree we challenge everyone's pathologos. If the truth of the self is true and universal for all, not only can it save our soul, not only is it our destiny, not only is it our highest purpose, most positive kind of destiny, ultimate purpose, not only is it that which can save humanity, it's able to do all those things because it specifically challenges the false, unsuspected beliefs we carry that cause our ignorance, cause our problem. As we said, all problems of humanity are to do with the soul. All problems of the soul are to do with the level of mastery of the Logos or the level of enslavement to your pathologos. So what? So if all problems are down to pathologos or logos, not just for individuals, not just for education, which is really remembering the immortal part of our soul, not just for spirituality, which is literally the mastery of this, the very thing we're talking about, the movement of logos into nous, into phronesis, and using all three apparently to benefit. So not only is it the intellectual academic tradition and the spiritual tradition and what we are all here to do as human beings, and we're doing it anyway, whether we like it or not. Not only is all that true, there aren't any teachers of it. There's this channel, but apart from this channel, I'm just a guy holding lemons that have all fallen out, and now I have no lemons. What am I going to do with all this lack of teachers of philosophy? And if there are no teachers of it, then it can't exist. Now, maybe the fact that we are saying that points to the fact that, well, we may not be teachers, but we're students. We're learning from Socrates. We're doing our best to read in this new way. We're doing our best to be open to changing our mind in a way that most people aren't, even to be able to read in this new way. So the fact that there are students, okay, maybe we can keep Socrates' argument. It can't be virtue or excellence of the soul, can't be something by nature Otherwise, we'd find the good baby boys and the good baby girls and put them up in the castle so that when they hit their prime, they can rule the city, blah, 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 blah. We don't do that, so it's probably not innate. But it's probably not able to be learned because there are no teachers or students. But there are students. There's us. Lovers of the logos. So maybe we can save the argument. If our community didn't exist, what would we say? There is no learning of the logos because we went around. It is learning. It's learning itself. It is the paradigm for learning. It is the paradigm for remembering, and learning is remembering. So, what do you think about this argument? Must there necessarily always be we students or teachers like Pierre and Socrates? Is that like a principle of reality? There will always be someone making this a legitimate argument. Well, we have got a conclusion. Number one, all human beings are motivated by soul, and all soul is about virtue, and all virtue isn't virtue unless it is, again, understanding through the dialectic, leading us to Nous, and is coordinated against Nous. So we use the experience of Nous as our model of excellence and beauty, and guiding us to phronesis and helping others reach phronesis. That's virtue. If it's rememberable, it's learnable. So if virtue stopped at that middle point at Nous, you could say we learn virtue. But because there's that next step beyond Nous, we are left wondering. It ain't innate. You got to be doing midwifery to get rid of your false beliefs, and you got to be doing this to perfect your art. So it ain't innate. But it also ain't Nous. In fact, parts of virtue are Nous. So what does that mean? Well, we've got a nice conclusion about what is teachable, what is rememberable. Hey, that might help us make sense of that quote that is so mistranslated. Socrates saying, "I am the wisest in Athens because I know nothing." The dumbest people use that quote to justify their ignorance, but that isn't the quote. The quote is, "I am wisest because I am not mistaken about what could be an object of knowledge." I'm not going to claim something is something I know when it isn't even knowable. Now that we have discovered what is knowable and what is learning, maybe that real quote will make more sense to us. Because if it ain't that, ain't rememberable, ain't learning, ain't truth in being. But also, what we're after, that which truly benefits the good daemon state of being, true virtue, true benefit of the self, perhaps that's beyond even Nous. If so, what is the equivalent? How do we learn that? If it's not a learning of remembering something the immortal part of our soul knows already, what is it? What's the difference? Again, it's not by nature, so we have to get it somehow, but how? And what will our friend Anitos add to the conversation on these questions and objects of wonder? Thanks once again to everybody in the chat. Even if you just said hello or said, "Hey, I'm just lurking, good to be here," or whatever. I appreciate it. I'm really grateful for my community. It's a small community, but it's a community of the best people. And I do appreciate it, even though I think I have 100 subscribers on YouTube, or on Twitch, or about the same. But, and a dozen or so Discord people, but I appreciate it. I appreciate that you are also curious. I want more people like that in the world. I appreciate that you're open to this new way of thinking. You're open to understanding. You're open to the self. I really appreciate that. And I appreciate the opportunity to reflect on that which is most meaningful with other human beings. So I'm very grateful. And on that, I hope to see you all next time.